So I said to our great First Lady, who can draw a crowd? Did you watch me tonight on television, First Lady? People love our First Lady.
Donald Trump doesn't need a teleprompter to cause chaos. He just needs a stage, a mic, and apparently a wife to humiliate publicly while she's not even present to defend herself. What was supposed to be a routine speech at the University of Alabama recently turned into an accidental episode of Real Housewives of Mar-a-Lago, starring Melania as the visibly horrified +1, except she wasn't even there to witness the humiliation firsthand. One moment he's rambling about fake news. The next he's casually throwing verbal grenades at his own marriage. Like it's date night at a demolition derby. Melania's expression? Somewhere between I'm fine and I've made terrible life choices. The crowd laughed. Melania didn't. Welcome to the roast no one asked for, but everyone can't stop watching. When Donald Trump opens his mouth in front of a crowd these days, it's less like a rally and more like a live-action train derailment starring one man and his unchecked ego. But just when you think you've seen the wildest plot twist in this reality TV presidency, the man decides to publicly drag his own wife into his latest fever dream of a speech. Like she's just another prop in his MAGA stage show. In the best part, she explicitly didn't want to be mentioned, which of course means he mentioned her immediately. Because if there's one thing Trump can't resist, it's doing exactly what you told him not to, especially when it involves humiliating someone else for applause. I want to do another thing because it's a Saturday and you know it's boring. There's nothing good on television. We'd rather do this anyway, wouldn't we? Trump started, setting the stage for what would become one of his most bizarre performances. Yet, the University of Alabama crowd showed up thinking they were getting a free show. Maybe some red meat political outrage. Instead, they got an old man spiraling on stage, ranting about transgender athletes, threatening governors, and wait for it, doing cartoon impressions of Olympic weightlifters while name-dropping his wife. Like she's the comic relief in his one-man act. The greatest is like weightlifting. You ever see the weightlifting where they have a record that wasn't broken in 18 years? And they have, should I imitate? You know, my wife gets very upset when I do this. She said, it's darling. It's not presidential. I said, yeah, but people like it. Not only did he say that his wife was going to be mad at him for the disgusting transphobic remarks that he made, he then humiliated himself in his weird little meltdown on stage. And let's be clear, this wasn't just your everyday Trump says something weird and deeply unsettling moment. No, this was a full-on meltdown. A festival of transphobia wrapped in incoherent anecdotes, all delivered in a tone that screamed, Grandpa, yelling at clouds. It's like he decided to take every Fox News segment he half remembered from a sleepless night and mash it into a Mad Lib speech, complete with an imaginary dialogue where Melania scolds him for being not presidential. Yes, he actually imitated her because obviously what the world needs most in 2025 is Donald Trump doing BAD Melania impressions between rants about volleyball injuries. We didn't see her much on the campaign trail, and we've barely seen her at all now that Donald Trump is unfortunately president. And of course, I'm talking about his wife, Melania, who's barely come up at all during this presidency until Donald Trump brought her up in what was an incredibly strange meltdown of a speech. The reason Melania's name was even summoned from the crypt of his memory, because Donald is in trouble again. Shocker. But this time, he's dragging his wife into the spotlight as a deflection technique, like a kid blaming the dog for eating his homework, only instead of homework, it's his rapidly crumbling legal defense, and instead of a dog, it's a woman who's been silently side-eyeing the circus for the last 8 years while hiding in Mar-a-Lago. But let's rewind for a second. Why this bizarre speech? Why now? Why Melania? Why weightlifting? He said something that was barely covered by the media, something he's only bringing up because of some recent legal troubles. It all started with Trump picking a fight with Maine Governor John M. Mills, you know, because that's what strong, competent leaders do. They threatened to defund schools in an entire state over transgender inclusion in sports. Very normal, totally stable behavior. Trump essentially told the governor to bow to his will or lose all federal funding, which again is just the kind of nuanced diplomacy we've come to expect from the man who thinks TikTok is a national security threat, but still can't spell USAID. I understand, Maine. Is Maine here? The governor of Maine here? Are you not going to comply with it? Trump began his tirade against Mills. When informed she was simply following state and federal laws, Trump retorted, well, we are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So, you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding. Mills didn't back down. By the way, she looked Trump squarely in the face and said, see you in court, which is gutsy considering Trump usually treats lawsuits like Pokemon. He tries to collect them all. And guess what? She won. That's right, John A. Mills beat Trump in court, making her one of many lately who've added defeated former president in legal battle to their resumes. Somewhere out there, Stormy Daniels is nodding in solidarity. And naturally, being bested by a woman in power didn't sit well with Mr. Fragile Ego. So instead of admitting defeat, Trump shuffled onto a stage and spun a tale so strange you'd think it was satire, except no comedian would ever go this far. He accused trans athletes of ruining sports, compared Olympic boxing matches to death matches, and then in the middle of all this threw Melania under the rhetorical bus by saying she hates. When he does his little impersonation stick, he said she tells him it's not presidential, which is rich coming from the guy who once encouraged injecting bleach. Imagine being Melania in this moment. You're probably somewhere between sipping cucumber water and Googling how to disappear completely when suddenly your husband, who still thinks crowd size matters more than facts, is on stage turning your private frustrations into a punchline. It's giving I'm trapped in a sitcom I never signed up for energy. And what did this circus sideshow accomplish? Absolutely nothing, except making Trump look even more unhinged. But don't worry, he had more disasters to juggle. Because while he was out here ranting about volleyballs hitting women to hard actual words from the speech. By the way, the real crisis was unfolding behind the scenes. His legal woes were stacking up like overdue library books. And the judges? Not exactly in the mood to hand out extensions. This whole outburst was just a cheap diversion. A classic Trump tactic. Distract, deflect, and drag everyone else down. With you even your reluctant first lady, and here's the kicker. Melania didn't even attend the event. That's right. The woman he so gleefully name-dropped wasn't there to hear it live. Probably for the best, because if looks could kill, Trump would have been vaporized by her death glare from across the country. It's like he's doing stand-up comedy. And the punchline is always his marriage. And if you're thinking, wow, that's a new low, hang on. We haven't even gotten to the part where he tried to mock Olympic weightlifters. Yes, again, as part of his transphobic rant. He performed an exaggerated impression of a female weightlifter failing to lift weights, while giggling like a child who just discovered sarcasm. And then, with full self-awareness, he admits Melania hates when he does this. So, naturally, he doubles down. If there's ever a Mount Rushmore of self-inflicted PR disasters, this one's getting carved in stone next to Sharpie hurricane path and bleach injection. But let's zoom out. Why even talk about this now? Because Trump is banking on distraction. Politics. He knows his legal defense is flimsier than a paper straw in a McFlurry. So, he's whipping up the culture war soup again. Trans athletes, Biden, Melania. Media all tossed into the MAGA blender with the lid off. He's hoping the noise drowns out the courtroom defeats, the federal investigations, the dwindling support among suburban moms, and the fact that his rallies are starting to look more like mid-tier county fairs than political movements. Meanwhile, Melania is trying to live a life of quiet luxury, far from the carnival music. But she keeps getting pulled back into the spotlight, not because she wants to say something, but because her husband can't keep her name out of his mouth. At this point, it's less supportive spouse and more hostage situation with occasional photo ops. And this isn't just cringe, it's dangerous. Trump's rhetoric about trans athletes isn't just embarrassing, it has real-world consequences. When the former president of the United States uses his platform to demonize an entire group of people, it emboldens hate, spreads misinformation, and worsens the already toxic political climate, all while hiding behind the thinnest veil of concern for fairness in women's sports, which, let's be honest, isn't something he's ever cared about before. He realized it could get him applause. He's not trying to protect athletes, he's trying to protect himself from legal exposure, from political irrelevance, from the cold reality that even his most loyal base is starting to check their watches during his speeches. And Melania, she's collateral damage, a pawn in a game she never wanted to play, rolled out on stage in absentia to provide a dash of Fox marital drama to an otherwise off-the-rails tirade. Trump's transphobia has gone so far that he was willing to deprive children of breakfast, lunch, and dinner to get it across the finish line. Just gross, many commentators noted. And clearly Melania agrees, based on what Trump himself admitted. During the speech, he kind of threw her under the bus. So, where does this leave us? With a former president so desperate for relevance that he's resorted to public theater involving his wife, imaginary weightlifting fails, and a crusade against equality disguised as patriotism. And with Melania probably asking Siri how long it takes to get Slovenian citizenship reinstated. But don't worry, Trump will be back with more speeches, more impersonations, more distractions, and most likely more lawsuits. And Melania? She'll keep doing what she does best, pretending none of this is happening, while quietly judging us all from the safety of a Florida palace built on denial. An overpriced gold leaf. So, buckle up, because if this speech proved anything, it's that Trump's campaign isn't just off the rails. It's a flaming clown car barreling toward the courthouse with Melania's name spray painted on the side. Let's not forget Melania has made it painfully clear that she wants absolutely nothing to do with this campaign. She skipped events, avoided press, ghosted campaign dinners like a pro. And when forced into public appearances, she radiates the warmth of a DMV line on a Monday morning. And still, Here comes Donald, dragging her into his fever dream speeches like she's just dying to participate. If silence could file for divorce, Melania's would have done it 2 elections ago. And yet, Trump keeps bringing her up like she's a supporting cast member in the Donald Trump show, which, let's face it, is just reruns of narcissism and bad lighting. He even does impersonations of her accent, turning what was once a vaguely sophisticated European cadence into a cartoonish caricature. That makes Bharat sound subtle. Imagine being an ex-first lady, and your biggest legacy is having your husband publicly mock your voice at Alabama rallies. Michelle Obama got best-selling books and Netflix deals. Melania gets. Whatever this is, is that a win for Trump? Is that how he saw that as a win? Do you see this as going to be a really positive result of acting like a disgusting bigoted buffoon? It's hard to understand this guy sometimes and what he's really after. But clearly Donald Trump is leaning on this issue because, as he previously said, we saw this at an Oval Office press conference, he doesn't care about it at all. He just thinks that it's an electoral victory for him. But here's where it gets even weirder. Trump is trying to make Melania's supposed disapproval of his jokes a selling point. Like, look, even my wife thinks I'm crossing a line. Haha, sir, that's not funny. That's a marriage counseling session you accidentally broadcast on national TV. He's out here treating spousal discomfort like campaign strategy. Vote for me. My wife thinks I'm embarrassing. And what's this obsession with volleyballs, you ask? Apparently, he thinks the greatest threat to Western civilization is transgender athletes playing volleyball. Too aggressively, it's like he fell asleep during a Fox News segment and woke up convinced that NCAA beach volleyball is the final battle of the culture war. Somewhere, world leaders are discussing climate change, global hunger, and economic collapse. Meanwhile, Donald's having a meltdown over imaginary spike serves. All of this the Melania mentions. The sports pantomimes, the manufactured outrage is one big flaming distraction. He's the magician waving a sparkler in one hand while stuffing subpoenas into his pockets with the other. Because while he was butchering his wife's accent and pantomiming volleyball concussions, real things were happening. Legal deadlines, financial disclosures, prosecutors sharpening their pencils. But Donald knows the formula: keep the crowd angry, keep the media busy, and make everything about him, even if it means humiliating the one person who still shows up to decide in the Christmas portraits. At this rate, Barron will write a memoir titled, "My Dad Tried to Imitate My Mom in Front of a Stadium, and All I Got Was This Book Deal." So, no, Melania wasn't there. But her ghost hovered over that speech like a silent scream because even in absence, she somehow managed to be the most composed, grounded, and reasonable figure in the entire debacle, which frankly is saying a lot when your competition is a man arguing with a volleyball. And speaking of haunting presences, Melania's absence is starting to feel less like a scheduling conflict and more like a carefully negotiated hostage exchange. At this point, even Bigfoot has made more confirmed public appearances than she has. But can you blame her? Would you voluntarily show up to an event where your husband, who can't spell unify without help, is busy using you as his punchline? Because, let's be honest, Melania's entire vibe lately screams contractual obligation. She appears at Mar-a-Lago like a Netflix cameo, brief, awkward, and designed to meet a quota. One minute she's spotted in the background of a gala. The next, she's vanishing into a puff of Versace in regret. Meanwhile, Trump's out there trying to spin it like she's a secret weapon. His ace in the hole. Buddy, the only hole Melania seems interested in is the one she's metaphorically digging to escape this circus. At the end of the day, Melania's absence says more than Trump's words ever could. In fact, her silence might just be the loudest political statement in this entire chaotic spectacle. And unlike Trump's speeches, it doesn't involve volleyballs. Trump's bizarre fixation on transgender athletes continued throughout his rambling speech, with comments that left many political analysts scratching their heads. Playing in women's sports, did you ever see some of the records? Did you ever see some of these boxing matches? You know, we have to protect. These women are great athletes, but we have to protect. He stammered, seemingly unable to complete a coherent thought. If you looked at the Olympics, where they had transition people going into the boxing, where the women had boxing and they had a great champion, a female boxer. I mean, after one punch, she walked back to the corner, said, "I can't get hit like that. I've never been hit like that before." The incoherence of these statements wasn't lost on the audience, many of whom were captured on video exchanging confused glances. What exactly was the point he was trying to make? Was there a point at all? Or was this just another instance of Trump throwing verbal spaghetti at the wall, hoping anything would stick and distract from his mountainous legal troubles? And speaking of distractions, let's talk about the legal quagmire Trump is currently wading through. While he's busy performing his one-man show, I can't believe it's not leadership. Courtrooms across America are filling with cases bearing his name. It's becoming increasingly clear that this sudden obsession with transgender athletes and public marital drama is the political equivalent of jangling keys in front of a baby. Look over here. not at the legal documents being filed. Trump's strategy is as transparent as his spray tan is orange. When the going gets tough legally, Trump gets weird publicly. It's a pattern we've seen time and again. Remember when the Stormy Daniels story broke? Suddenly Trump was tweeting about nuclear buttons in North Korea. When the Mueller investigation heated up, suddenly there was a national emergency at the border. Now, with legal walls closing in from all sides, we're treated to the spectacle of Trump doing weightlifting impressions while throwing his wife's name around like confetti at a parade. Nobody wanted to attend. The strategy is obvious: create such a bizarre spectacle that the media can't help but cover it, pushing the actual problematic legal issues to page 2. It's hard to focus on complex legal arguments when there's a former president on stage, pretending to be an Olympic athlete while simultaneously impersonating his wife's accent. It's distraction as performance art, and Trump is its reigning master.